Hi, I'm Dr. Stan Steindl. Today on Compassion in a T-shirt, I'm going to be speaking with Mallori DeSalle and Lodge Mccammon about therapeutic humour. Mallory is a licensed mental health counsellor, an internationally certified prevention specialist, motivational interviewing trainer, which is where I know her from, and a certified humour professional. As a speaker and trainer, she sparked curiosity in both the young and the young at heart. Her passion for creating a lasting impact led her to the public health field. And for the past 14 years, she's worked at Prevention Insights, a centre with the School of Public Health at Indiana University, Bloomington. Mallory works with people all over the world. She served on the board of directors for the Association of Applied and Therapeutic Humour, and in 2021 became a TEDx speaker. Her credentials don't impress her family, but they impress me. But occasionally her corny jokes do make them laugh. Dr. Lodge Mccammon is a therapeutic humorist, instructional designer, author, musician, and international education consultant who provides professional services including keynote speeches, workshops, curriculum development, and a variety of training programs. He works with school districts, universities, non-profits and businesses, for example, Palm Beach Schools, University of the West Indies, Discovery Education, Microsoft, Amazon. Most recently, Lodge facilitated a month of therapeutic humour for the Nourished Teachers community, which is a Facebook-funded initiative focused on helping educators cope with work stress and avoid burnout. He uses a program that he designed called Laugh It Off to help his clients transform their daily frustrations into humour. I had a delightful conversation with Mallory and Lodge, all about therapeutic humour, but also a little bit about where therapeutic humour might fit with compassion-focused therapy. I hope you get something out of our conversation, maybe even a few laughs.
Well, Stan, thank you for having us. We're thrilled to be here, and thanks to everyone who is listening. Let's begin with a paradox, which is a situation that has contradictory features. So here it is. Humor and laughter are desperately needed today. Humor and laughter are very, very risky today.
Yes. Therapeutic humor isn't really about us delivering jokes and telling you about what's funny. If we do that, it's really going to alienate a large percentage of almost any audience, especially these days. So it's really more about us inviting you to find your own funny. Evoking humor can safely help everyone access more joy in life.
During this podcast, there it is. That's the first joke. During this podcast, there we are. We're going to demonstrate that exact thing that Mallory just said by inviting Stan to be our client, so we can explore some therapeutic humor exercises together.
We're going to do some warm-up activities and then engage in a series of 3 therapeutic humor exercises. But first, Stan, we want to ask for permission. Would it be okay if we begin?
Yes, as long as you don't ask me to say podcast.
Well, you already did. You already did. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a hard word.
We're good.
It's a hard word.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. One other thing, real quick before we begin. It is possible, actually, it's probable that you will listen to this podcast and be, hey, got it right, podcast and be like, I don't think what they're saying is funny at all. It's very possible. And that's okay. This is not a stand-up comedy performance. This is an intentional conversation between the 3 of us. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've gotten on these conversations, I've heard, is that people are like, I watched the whole thing. It was really interesting, but it just wasn't funny at all. And there's something magical about people being together. There's something magical about humor together. And yeah, if you're listening to this in your car or while you're taking a walk on your headphones, again, you may not laugh, and that's okay.
I do have sort of adolescent children, so I'm used to kind of like when I try to make a joke. So that's fine. That's fine.
The grin, the grimace, the eye roll, all of that is fine. And if you think what we come up with is funny, great. But if not, that's also fine. In either case, we invite you to try these exercises that we talk about today. And I don't know, see if you can make yourself laugh. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, Stan.
Very good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Make yourself laugh. That's kind of the main thing. And then, if you try these exercises with a group of people that like the three of us are doing, you probably will laugh, even though, again, listening to it, you may not be sparked to laugh.
Don't undersell it.
I know. Okay.
It could be great.
You're going to laugh every 5 seconds. Every 12 seconds, you're going to laugh. Yeah. All right. So for our warm up, let's try something really simple. Let's start with something very, very simple. So Stan, what is the funniest word that you can think of?
Fart. Am I allowed to say that?
You can say whatever you'd like. So
it always makes me laugh for some reason.
The word fart, is that what you started with?
Yes.
That's how we're kicking off the podcast.
That's the beginning.
Okay.
I like
That's
it.
the beginning. So now the cool thing about that word is that word means multiple things. It doesn't just mean gas. It means other things too. And so let's see if that's what you mean.
Okay.
Mallory, what's the funniest word you can think of?
Oh my gosh. Now the pressure's on. Gobbledygook.
That's a great word. That's a funny word. Mine is bumbershoot. Yeah. I like that word, bumbershoot. All right.
There feels like there's a relationship between those three words. I'm not sure, but
that would
we're
be
going to find out.
That would be exciting. Just simply using those funny words by itself. I mean, you can tell it makes people laugh. And so what we'd like to try is, instead of just saying the word, like, I feel like I'm not making any sense right now, I could say, I feel like all of this was gobbledygook. It makes it sound funnier.
Right. So let me give it a try. So instead of saying, bummer, man, it's starting to rain, I wish I had my umbrella, I can say, bummer, man, it's starting to rain, I wish I had my bumbershoot. Just funny words. Just swap it with a funny word. All right.
I like it. Okay, Stan, let's give you a try. So give us a short statement that you don't think is funny, and then use your funny word, fart, in that same sentence to make it funny. Okay.
Now I feel puerile. But anyway, a not funny statement first. So I'm scared of taking my next flight overseas. It keeps me up at night. Oh, I'm scared of taking my next fart overseas. It keeps me up at night. Oh,
now, which definition of FART are you referring to? I think there's three, right? So there's gas, and then there's and like sort of a silly person, like an old fart. That's another.
Oh, of course,
incompetent. I think it's incompetent, maybe. And then there's a third definition. Mallory, do you know what that is?
Wasting time. Wasting time.
Okay. Farting around.
Okay,
yeah.
Right.
So which definition did you mean?
Definitely the first one, I think. keeping it simple.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, and so just dropping funny words into sentences, and you did a great job, especially a sentence where you built up this tension already, like you're expressing something difficult. I'm stressed out about taking a flight, so I'm stressed out about taking a. I can't finish the sentence, but yes, yeah, okay,
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Are you ready for another warm-up activity? Stan,
Sure.
what's the next one? Let's see. The next activity gets us thinking about absurdity. Oh my gosh. Okay, so absurdity, Stan, means something wildly unreasonable. It's illogical, something that creates a caricature of reality. You see what I'm saying here? So with that in mind, Stan, complete the following sentence with the most absurd idea you can think of. And I'm a little bit worried now. We'll see. If sadness were a meal, it would be.
If sadness were a meal, it would be sweet and sour tofu.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
oh, yeah. That's funny because it's surprising. I didn't expect you to say that. So surprising, unexpected, absurd responses, that's what sparks laughter in others. If we can surprise people, we tend to get them to laugh. That's kind of the only formula. So saying surprising things, which let's rewind for a second. When Stan said F-A-R-T, I can't even say the whole word. When he said that was surprising, I wouldn't expect Stan to open up the podcast with F-A-R-T. So that was surprising to me, which is why I laughed.
Yeah. And, initially it's the sadness, the idea of sadness that builds all of that tension, especially in our lives, because we all get sad. I mean, you understand that it's painful. And when we get sad, one way to help pull us out of it is to laugh. And the cool thing is by laughing, it releases this cocktail of helpful chemicals like dopamine and serotonin, and our brain and our body. It all changes perspectives.
Yeah, according to research, humor and laughter actually help maintain well-being by reframing stressful events. Humor can be used to communicate difficult issues, which can help clients cope with emotional and physical suffering, sickness, and loss. 2017 study showed that when clients laughed for 30 minutes, there were significant physical and mental benefits.
Yeah. So,
which is I'm trying to think, when was the last time I laughed for 30 minutes?
In a row. No.
No.
Maybe in a whole day. In a whole day.
Okay.
It can be aggregate, completely aggregate. So
okay. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, you can sort of pile it up, and we want you to. So one of those techniques that you can use, Stan, is the next time that you're feeling sad, you can think, if sadness were a meal, it would be, what'd you say?
Sweet and sour tofu.
In that moment of sadness, you're reframing it. And that practice of reframing sadness, that right there, that's therapeutic humor. Oh, sweet and sour.
All right.
It's an interesting one, actually. I wonder now that I've said it, because it's sort of, what are some other examples of what people might say there? I mean, have you had other, because in some ways I think, oh, mine's almost a little bit sort of, sweet and sour or something. I was trying to be clever almost or something. But what have other people said?
We've gotten all sorts of real strange answers.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that really got me. I said, if sadness were a meal, it would be Brussels sprouts. I don't know why that got me.
I like Brussels sprouts personally.
Yeah, me too.
I don't like sweet and sour tofu.
My favorite response is a red wine and Oreo smoothie.
Okay, right. Yeah, actually, no, that's good. That's good.
I would be sad, but I would kind of like it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then David Prescott. So we worked with David Prescott recently from Safer Society, and his response was hilarious. He said, if sadness were a meal, it would be all the caterpillars from my garden.
Yes.
Yeah, and he had a whole story about why that is, because he fights this battle. So he made it relevant, and he found that enjoyable, and we did as well.
Yeah. Good. Great.
Yes. All right. So Stan, do you feel warmed up?
Yes, pretty much, I would say.
Okay. Excellent. So let's jump into the therapeutic exercises. So exercise 1,
Okay.
we call it Pie-a-lo punchlines. So punchlines are absurd statements that can add humor and diffuse tension when placed at the end of any sentence. What's really interesting is that these punchlines can spark laughter, even if they are non sequiturs, which are conclusions that may not logically follow from the previous statement.
Okay, so for example, here are 2 non sequitur punchlines from a previous session that I thought were really funny. First one, I guess I won't get my deposit back. And the second one is, I blame public libraries.
Right. So those are just silly, sort of nonsensical statements. Those are good. And so here are 2 punchlines from previous sessions that made me laugh. And while we're thinking about this, the way we deliver punchlines can also help punch them up. So like Mallory's last one, I blame public libraries. You can say it like, I blame public libraries. Or you can be like, I blame public libraries. And one of those is just naturally more funny than the other because we're being dramatic, and the dramatic brings out the absurdity. It unearths the absurdity. So let me try to really perform these. So 2 non sequitur punchlines that I think are funny. Uh-oh, someone spilled the SpaghettiOs. It's medium. Here's a second.
I like that one.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
And then, and that's the most dangerous game. All right.
Gosh.
Mysterious. So, Stan, no pressure here, but we would love to hear a few punchlines that maybe you think are funny. And we would love to invite you to think about absurd, ridiculous, silly kinds of statements. And there really is no wrong answer.
Right. So shall I try to come up with them now?
We'd love that.
Yeah.
Actually, Lodge, when you did the one with David Prescott, you played a little bit of ukulele, didn't you? At these moments of trying to think.
I did, and why we did that is because we had 300 people logged in, so I had to entertain them while David came up.
I see.
So
okay.
We'll just sit here silently and stare at you and see.
Okay. Okay. And that's when the lights went on.
There it is.
Oh, I've always liked, these pretzels are making me thirsty. I suppose
these pretzels are making me. This is Seinfeld, right?
I think that's Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I like that one.
I guess I'll just keep collecting the toe jam.
Okay.
Another favorite of mine. Oops, I did it again. I'm going through a bit of a pop phase. It's lasted about 30 years, but and somewhere a fairy is rolling around the floor laughing.
I like it. Those are good. Those are good. And of course, the whole idea was we're going to pair these with other things here in just a moment. So these aren't necessarily standalone pieces, and we're going to see sort of the magic of the non sequitur come into play here in just a moment. Before we get there, Stan, can you tell us just like a story behind one of the punchlines? Kind of how did you come up with it? Where does it come from?
Oh, it sort of might sound a bit strange, but for some reason I've always found toe jam to be a funny concept. Toe jam. I mean, but actually there's a Split Enz song. Do you know Split Enz, the band? They're a sort of an Australian, New Zealand band. See my baby walking down the street. I see red, I see red, I see red. I might edit that bit out, but anyway,
that's the best.
They have a song called Split Enz, and in that is a line I think that says something like, "Sniffing toe jam's really neat," which as a young man I thought was hilarious. So Yeah, toe jam.
Okay. Yeah,
I'll just
fascination with
I'll
toe
just keep
jams. I love
collecting the
it.
toe jam.
Yeah.
I feel like I know you on a deeper level now.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Yes.
And this exercise helps establish that sort of agreement, that social contract within the community, which is the three of us here. We are a community now, and any community can do what we just did by developing a list of punchlines. And so anytime we have a frustration or a stress, we can say one of these punchlines, and it's an invitation to everyone to start laughing about toe jam or something. These become sort of those low barrier inside jokes using these non sequitur punchlines.
Yeah. I see.
Yeah. So according to research, humor is a healthy strategy that can be practiced daily to reduce the negative impacts of frustration and stress. Also, humor and laughter are associated with increases in motivation, productivity, and psychological safety. Even throwing out some like non sequitur punchlines can really get us there. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So since we've already started to establish some of these punchlines, Stan, that you just gave us, we now have a resource that we can use to be really helpful. Like if I'm having a really tough day, I might say, gosh, I have had a really terrible day. I guess I'll keep collecting the toe jam.
Yes.
I guess if I have to.
I guess,
Right? If
yeah.
I have to collect the toe jam.
Yeah. Like, does it stay fresh? I don't know. I'm curious.
No. Oh, this is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this immediately, what Mallory just walked us through, immediately releases the tension of the frustration, which allows us to move forward and move toward acceptance. See, we have created that social contract between the three of us, but it can work with any group. So I encourage you all listening right now, try this at home. You may not have laughed at the toe jam, but come up with your own. Try it with the people that you're around.
Absolutely.
I dare you to not have laughed at toe jam.
That's right. So we've been really silly here, Stan, and it makes me curious about how this type of exercise might apply within the work that you do in the field of compassion. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean it's great stuff. I think it really does connect with compassion. I mean, Paul Gilbert, he's the sort of one of my professional heroes, and he developed compassion focused therapy and so on. But he makes the point that compassion can sometimes feel very serious. It can be textured with a whole range of emotions, like sorrow or sadness or anxiety or righteous anger and so on. But he really does make the point that compassion can also be playful. And I think therapeutic humor, can be a way into that sense of playfulness, even in the context of suffering, perhaps. Compassion is about suffering. So in some ways there's that, but playfulness can be very helpful. He sort of really emphasizes the importance of tone. In fact, compassion-focused therapy really began when Paul recognized that people he was working with clinically, they could often challenge their irrational thoughts in kind of objective ways, but they did it with a hostile tone. So they would, they might say, of course people like you, you fool, or something like that, like in a way it's challenging, nobody likes me, but doing it with a kind of a hostile tone. So this was really the beginnings of it, actually, was to bring, to work on the tone and bringing warmth and friendliness and ultimately compassion to this, self-talk. And I think, you can sort of feel it, with this therapeutic humor. You can feel the playfulness, you can feel the warmth and friendliness. And that bit you said, I'm raving on now, but it's good stuff. Like the bit you said about, community and inside jokes and Lodge, you mentioned just that psychological safeness piece. In some ways that's really key in CFT. We talk about the three circles model of emotion and emotion regulation. And so we have the threat system, which is the fight, flight, freeze appease stuff, and we have the drive system, which is all about pursuing, achieving, and obtaining. But then we have the soothing system where we feel safe and we feel connected with others. It's known as the soothing affiliative system because it's all about affiliation, connectedness, closeness, feeling calm and safe with others. And I really feel like, that the therapeutic humor can be part of that. Like I can imagine, Mallory, I'll be seeing you next in Chicago, I think. And if you happen to be in the audience for one of my little presentations, I might even just do a little mention of toe jam, and there you'll be, and we'll have a little inside joke. And in a situation which could be generally a little bit sort of threat system activating, presenting in front of a big group, now I feel this kind of connection with someone, and I feel kind of there's a safeness that kind of comes out of it. So I really love that part of it as well. And obviously ultimately we're working with self-criticism and shame, and well, I guess in therapeutic humor is really important there, and kind of needs to be done kind of skillfully and carefully. And you made the point at the start about it really being an evocative process, that we're not telling people why their very difficult feelings are funny, but rather inviting them to just sort of tilt their, sort of their attention to perhaps what might be the humor in all of this, in a way that perhaps even helps to soften the shame. So I can sort of imagine, that this stuff really weaving through and being very compatible with CFT.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Mallory, may I do a reflective response to that? Or were you thinking of it?
I'm both ready for it. You go for it.
Okay, I'll go first. No, it's just, I thought it's really interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that. And that's great. I mean, that message will probably carry through the rest of the exercises as well. It'll reinforce this concept. So that's beautiful. I love the idea of that the humor possibly in a compassion framework helps create a playful tone. And that playful tone helps sort of improve positive self-talk, which is wonderful, to access the soothing system in order to soften the shame.
Yes.
That chain of events is beautiful, very powerful. Thank you for sharing. Did I get that right?
Yeah. That's a nice little complex reflection. Well done.
Yeah. Well, and to sort of sprinkle a couple of extra bits on top, I think what you're describing, Stan, is all of that cortisol going through our system when we're feeling a threat. And how that if you have this moment of respite, that all you have to do is, well, I guess I'll keep collecting toe jam. And then you get that serotonin and oxytocin. All of a sudden you have trust and safety in your body, and you no longer feel like, oh my gosh, I must fight, I must flight. But gosh, I have appreciation for my body now, and for the person who's sitting in the audience smiling, who gets, and that's that compassion for one another, and then turning it inward for oneself.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, that's nice because, yes, in a way, the even in that little moment, there's compassion flowing in various directions, isn't there? There's a kind of compassion coming from, perhaps you in the audience towards me. There's a little bit of compassion bouncing back at you because you feel, sort of a part of it too, and it feels good to sort of have that moment. And then, of course, it's all about the self-compassion piece, me just sort of helping myself to soften and soothe, physically, and slow down the body, slow down the mind, and a calm mind thinks differently, and so then I can do my stuff, do my presentation in a different kind of state. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Are you ready to move on to our next exercise? What do you think, Stan?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, so we've started by thinking about how to apply this with these simple concepts, but we're going to go into something a little bit deeper. We're going to look at the comedy of complaints. So we're going to ask you to share a few one-line complaints. It can be any stressor, any frustration. Here, let me give you a couple of examples. I have a couple that I can offer to you.
A couple of complaints.
For example, it really bothers me when my kids take off their seatbelts before I put the car in park. Just us. How about you, Lodge?
Yeah, I'll share one. Today, well, my colleague didn't show up for our meeting. Yeah. So, Stan, do you have a few that you would like to share that you would be comfortable sharing?
Well, COVID is just dragging on and on. Yeah. Way to bring it all down, Stan. But anyway, yeah, it is. I really hate it when people in fancy cars park in the no standing zone outside my cafe.
Your cafe.
I actually do hate that. But anyway, and doing the home chores every weekend sucks.
Yeah.
1 star, do not recommend.
Yeah.
No. So we've just asked you to say a bunch of complaints. So check in with your body, Stan. How does your body feel right now?
Well, actually, it went through a little journey. The COVID one, I just went, ugh, and that did feel heavy because that kind of, the fancy cars one did make me actually giggle a little bit, funnily enough, probably feeling slightly, sort of self-conscious or something, I'm not sure. And then down it went again with the idea of, kind of the home chores.
Right. And that makes sense. Thinking of annoyances or problems can remind our body of stress. And when we share those complaints with friends, it can even influence the feelings of stress for them as well. So, and we sort of felt that with the COVID especially. So COVID is going on and on. The three of us were like, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think we all felt that one. Probably in comparison to that one, why we laughed. I mean, this is really interesting. Why we laughed at the second one, it was a little more lighthearted and it had more specificity. Fancy cars, no parking zone in front of so more specificity. And I think the three of us were looking to laugh after the COVID thing. We were looking to break that tension.
It's interesting.
And we probably would laugh at almost anything as long as it had some specificity, some sort of embedded silliness to it. I'm not saying that complaint is silly. It's just it has enough specificity to feel like fancy cars, no parking zone. Wait, sorry, no standing zone. Is that?
We call it no standing. Yeah.
No standing.
We don't
no
have
standing. In front of my
no
coffee
standing.
place.
Everyone must be sitting.
I will sit down.
Everybody sit down. Sit down. Yeah.
Well,
so that's
Oh, sorry, Lodge.
No,
what I was thinking was, right now we're just looking at these complaints, and of course you can feel how your body's being drugged down by it. So what we want to do is take your complaints and look at them through a humor lens. So what we'd like for you to do is pick one of those complaints. It can be any one of those complaints that you would like to then take and add one of your punchlines and see what sparks laughter. So take your complaint, add the punchline as the second line. Usually when you put the two together, it ends up being really funny. For example, if I go back to mine, it totally bothers me when my kids take off their seatbelts before I put my car in park. I guess I won't get my deposit back. My poor kids. They're not going to be returned, I tell you what.
And there's layers to that, right? So that could mean all sorts of different things. And the listener, that's the fascinating thing about the non sequiturs, because it's so kind of random. Everybody gets to plug in their own meaning to that punchline. Like to me, that means, that's layers of absurdity. Like the idea of trying to get a deposit back for having children is funny to me, because you obviously you don't give a deposit when you have children, so you can't get it back. So that's absurd. But everybody could have their own or interpretation of what that means, and they can make their own funny out of it. So there's lots of different ways to laugh, and the nonsensical non sequitur part of it gives the invitation to the listener to define it however they want. Which I think it's so important. Why it's so important that it's delivered in the way that Mallory delivered it. And let me, hers was pretty good, but let me try a funny complaint here. So my complaint was, well, my colleague didn't show up for a meeting. My colleague didn't show up for our meeting. Uh-oh, someone spilled the SpaghettiOs. It's very silly, but that makes me laugh. That's silly.
And that's what I was thinking. That's the key, isn't it? It's in some ways, it's not as much about the listener as it is the speaker in this instance. The therapeutic humor is about the person with the complaint feeling vaguely amused by their own punchline in that sense.
And if we're in a group together, we all know, okay, I hear this person's sharing a complaint. We're going to support them at easing that tension by laughing too. And we want to do that with Dan. So, okay, let's take some.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mallory. Let me jump in real quick. Let me try this again. So just to kind of drive this home, because even if I'm really upset by my colleague not showing up and I'm kind of muddling through the punchline and I don't deliver it well, I can still, so our community can still reinforce that, even if I don't say it in a way that actually is funny. So let me try that, and you please laugh anyway. So I'm going to do a poor job at this. Well, you laugh right there. Okay, so, well, my colleague didn't show up for our meeting. Uh-oh, someone spilled the SpaghettiOs. So now I didn't deliver that in a very funny way, and I'm sort of angry about it. And the fact that you both laughed, it actually made me happier. Like, I'm like, oh, I guess that was funny. Now I feel good. Fantastic.
Yes. In a situation where we are using it therapeutically, would there be a way for the listener to repeat the punchline with more of the kind of drama piece that you mentioned earlier? Or
I mean, I think that in that moment, that evocative piece is essential. So if you're in that therapeutic environment and you're a clinician, then of course you're saying, where's the punchline? What would you pick for a punchline? And then go ahead and say it. And if they go, well, spaghetti, and actually that's kind of funny.
It is.
That is funny.
That reminded me of that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, well, I was just thinking, if they don't laugh, of course, as the clinician, you can say, how did you feel? You want to give it a go again.
I see.
But that could be their attempt at funny, whatever they're doing. That's ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah. You really reminded me of what's the lead actress in Pitch Perfect?
Yes, she's
hilarious. And
are we talking about Kendrick, or are we talking about
Kendrick?
I think Anna Kendrick.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll take it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hilarious.
Yeah, I accept.
But Stan, I think to your point, you were kind of, I think one of the things I took from your comment was, it is possible to throw punchlines, agreed upon community punchlines, on other people's complaints.
Oh, okay.
It is possible. So I might say, let's just go back to this one. Well, my colleague didn't show up for our meeting, and Stan, you might say,
uh-oh, someone spilled the SpaghettiOs.
Sorry, right? And then now you've helped me. I didn't come up with that, and it reminds me. Oh yeah, we did agree that is a funny thing, and now that made me laugh. Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful.
But I can imagine that's the bit that's very delicately approached. Like knowing the person.
Yes.
Exactly. That's the risk. That right there is the risk. Yes.
Therein lies. So what we instead want to do is have you come up with, where's the complaint and where's the punchline. So the setup is, the complaint, which builds tension, and the punchline relieves the tension. So the setup for you, let's go ahead and look at, let's see. Doing the home chores every weekend sucks.
And somewhere a fairy is rolling on the floor laughing. That's so silly.
It's very silly. And I think we all have probably our own
imagery
interpretations of imagery of what's going on there. That's hilarious.
Love that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Do you have, Stan, do you have any, would you like to try another?
What was COVID is just dragging on and on. I just keep collecting more toe jam.
You can collect it on your next fart.
Yes. Oh, you said it. Well done.
Yeah. So I know. Yeah. So that's a callback. So now we're really getting into it. All right.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know why, but that's absolutely hysterical.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. So you can see how we just almost started writing jokes there with setups and punchlines. How are you feeling in terms of your stress now, Stan?
Well, it definitely just diffuses the feeling, especially the COVID one, like that. It sort of it sort of diffuses the heaviness and makes it lighter.
And the fascinating, so having done this quite a bit with a number of people, well, I've done this myself many times and done this with other groups and other people. What's really fascinating about this work is that, so once you create this list of punchlines, and you could have lots of them. I mean, Mallory and I have created hundreds. And so what's really fascinating about the work is that you take any complaint, exactly like we've done, and there's something sort of magical about it, because once you have a complaint, and the toe jam thing is a perfect example, because that would probably work with so many complaints. Like you could plug it into, it would be a go-to. It would be a go-to punchline. But there's something really interesting, because as you have a complaint, you express it, maybe you write it down, and you start scrolling through this list. You start scanning it, and it's almost like something catches your attention, and then you just start laughing. And it's not always the same one every time. It's so context specific, but there's something sort of interesting and magical about that process of scanning through your punchlines to find out what's going to release the tension the best for you, for me. Right. Yes. So this exercise, this kind of process provides a safe way to invite people in our community, and in this case, the three of us, to be honest and vulnerable, regardless of the complaint. The social contract means that if we put a punchline at the end, we give ourselves and others permission to laugh, which again, like Mallory said, can diffuse that tension built up from any stressor or frustration.
Absolutely. So actually, we know that in research, what this does is it reduces our stress, and it allows us, the three of us right here, to have an improved relationship. We feel like we are more comfortable, and laughter as a resource can help fight off symptoms of depression, reverse negative thinking, and even help us fight off unproductive concerns about work and preconceived ideas. And so it definitely can help, address some of the things related to compassion work and shame. And so I'm curious, again, with this exercise, Stan, how does this exercise play into the work that you might do with your client?
Let me just jump in real fast with a side note. We'll get back to that in just 1 second, because the exercise also offers, and I think we mentioned this before, but I just jumped out at me, an example of what the basic structure of a joke, right? So as Mallory said a second ago, so the complaint is the setup, and that's what builds tension. So it's the COVID piece. It's COVID goes on and on. And the punchline is the toe jam piece, right? So that breaks the tension. So that's really kind of all a joke is. It's that setup to create tension and the punchline to release the tension. And the more absurd, silly, ridiculous, surprising that punchline is, the bigger laughs you will get. So I apologize for interrupting. Yeah. So I just wanted to make that quick note. But yeah, how does this concept relate to your work in compassion?
Yeah, well, the sort of, I mean, imagine if we could sort of work with our own self-criticism in this way. You know, that this is a big focus for CFT, is working with the critical self. I guess we sort of think of multiple selves in CFT, and that there are different parts of ourselves, and one part might be this critical self. And you know, you could sort of imagine that the critical self statement is like the setup, I guess, and then perhaps followed by the punchline, or the and it seems, again, we would be approaching it in a careful sort of a way, wisely, you know. But maybe we also talk about the compassionate self, which is another part of ourselves. And in CFT, we're really cultivating and developing this compassionate self. And so the critical self is saying, you know, I'm no good. And the compassionate self is offering the punchline. Now, because remember, both of these are parts of the person that we're working with. So it's still being evocative. It's just developing these different aspects within the one person. Actually, it'd be very interesting to hear comments from those of you who do end up listening or watching all of this, and to see what you think about that idea. But yeah, we have a whole range of strategies in CFT, like imagery practices and embodiment practices, chair work. You could sort of almost imagine that the person is in the critical self chair, delivers the kind of the setup, and then the person shifts to the compassionate self chair and delivers the punchline in a compassionate way. You know, it's kind of interesting. I think we're sort of trying to work on these different parts of ourselves, and maybe therapeutic humor could be in there, you know, in these really intentional and evocative ways. Yeah.
Fantastic. So the next exercise we're going to do, I think, will continue this concept and this discussion about the multiple selves and multiple perspectives, and how much of a struggle that really is. But what I heard that really spoke to me in terms of these multiple selves, I love the idea that, you know, the setup is sort of the self-criticism. That's part of you, and also part of you is the compassion itself. And kind of tying into what you said a few minutes ago on your reflections about the punchlines. So it's sort of it's a compassionate self that is also a playful self.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And sort of comes in with the punchline to just maybe slightly defuse the tension, you know, and kind of, because critical self is often very much threat system activation. You know, that's the part of ourselves that, you know, is kind of feeling often kind of social threat. And up goes sympathetic nervous system activation, up goes the cortisol, as Mallory was saying perhaps before. And then in comes the compassionate self with little ways to try to, you know, kind of down regulate and, you know, activate parasympathetic nervous system and help to sort of soften some of that threat system activation with humor.
Yes, that's really beautiful. It's a great way to depict the setup and the punchline.
Yeah.
Just building and releasing of all of that tension. Beautiful. So let's take it one step further here. Let's look at the next exercise. And so this next exercise is called the Comedy of Contradictions. So you might be feeling like you understand this, because in our lives, we have an endless series of situations that we feel conflicted about. I mean, certainly we on the daily face paradoxes, double binds, contradictions, ambivalences. That's my favorite one. Things that have contradictory features, right? So in reality, it's not about judging which side of the paradox is right or wrong. But really, it's about acknowledging that our lives are replete with these double binds and doing the work that allows us to accept that both sides can exist together.
Both sides, the multiple selves, right? Accepting that you have multiple selves. I think that was a great bridge to talking about this. It's actually really difficult to accept an internal contradiction. For example, I love my job. I don't want to work. I mean, I think a lot of people share that paradox. Every day I wake up, you're like, oh gosh, I love what I get to do. I don't want to do any of it. So many of us want to think that there are right and wrong ways to be. And we effectively tell ourselves that half of our feelings are wrong because they contradict with how we think we should be. That negative self-talk can put or keep me in a state of discontent. If I'm thinking, how dare I even think that I don't want to work? How dare I? Oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person. What's wrong with me? Of course I should want to work. Should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can hear it. You can hear those pieces of that critical self, right? So I'll share one of my paradoxes, one of my sort of conflicts. I want my kids to be really self-sufficient, and I do everything for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that one as well. Yeah, that's really tough. And what I think one of the biggest ambivalences that I hear from people is along those lines. Is like, I love my kids.
They drive me nuts.
They drive me nuts. Like, it's really, really hard, right? Like that's a really fundamental human paradox right there. And so here's one of mine. I don't like it when people are judgmental of others. Sometimes I judge other people.
Yes.
You know, I don't know how to.
It's interesting, isn't it? Even the paradoxes themselves can actually evoke a little bit of, kind of humor, depending on how they're delivered too, I suppose.
Right. The delivery is key, and we've gotten into delivering these really well. And it's a testament to the strength of the three of our community right now, that we are in this mindset of laugh at everything. Like, we're trying to find things funny. If we're alone in a room at night and I've had a hard day, it's a very different situation where I'm like, I don't like it when people are judgmental of others. Sometimes I judge other people. And how dare I even say I judge other, and then we get off this thing. But right now we have this wonderful, warm community that pretty much if I say anything like, da, 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 I mean, everybody, it's likely to, well, that didn't work, did it? Terrible point. All right, next.
So as you can tell, Lodge and I have both shared a paradox. So if you're comfortable, Stan, we would love if you would be so generous to share one of yours with us today.
Well, I live and breathe compassion and self-compassion, and I am super self-critical. That didn't make anyone laugh.
I get it.
I feel that deeply.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And as you know, one of the ways that we can practice acceptance, and this is no news to you, Stan, is to write them down. And then here's where we come in. Add one of our non sequitur punchlines to the end. So Lodge, if it's okay, I'm going to try yours. Now, normally, Dan, we would invite the client or the other person to come up with their own. So this is a little bit outside of the norm, but Lodge and I have agreed upon this in advance. Okay. So if I were Lodge, I might say, I love my job. I don't want to work. I guess I'll keep collecting toe jam. It works.
It works.
Yeah. I guess I will. Thank you for keying me into that. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Next time you take your shoes off, you'll be thinking of me. My smiling face will be in your mind.
Yeah, so it's painful, as we've been exploring, to face a paradox. If we add a punchline, just like with the complaints, it can make expressing it playful and maybe even pleasurable. Maybe.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I'd love to share how I've used a punchline with my paradox, if you don't mind. So it's not as funny as yours, Stan, but I still have really enjoyed it myself. So I want my kids to be self-sufficient. I do everything for them. I blame public libraries.
What did they ever do to you?
Oh,
No, that's good.
I can't find the books. I can't find them. They're lost.
All right. So I got one. Let me try one. How about this? I don't like it when people are judgmental of others. Sometimes I judge other people. And that's the most dangerous game.
Okay.
Again, it's no toe jam, but it makes me laugh.
Toe jam. Oh, that's a t-shirt right there. Oh, it's no toe jam. Okay, well, Stan, what would you do to make one of your paradoxes? I know you gave us one. I'm sure you have more than one. So certainly up to you. Would you like to start with the first one?
I live and breathe compassion and self-compassion. I am super self-critical. And that's when the lights went on.
See, I have a really interesting interpretation of that actually makes me laugh. That's kind of weird. I'm not going to explain it because it's strange, but that's funny to me. I like it. Would you like to try another one?
In my dotage, I want to stay fit and strong. I hate getting up early in the morning. These pretzels are making me thirsty. Sorry, that one does make me laugh.
Yeah, that's just a great punchline.
So
I mean,
silly.
It's a great
cultural.
It's a great punchline. I think you
That's
pretty much throw
classic.
that at the end of anything. Yeah, it's
Yes.
classic.
Yes, it's a classic.
Do you have one more?
I love my pets, but 2 cats and 2 dogs is 4 too many. I guess I'll just keep collecting toe jam.
So that the 4 too many, that's another example of that specificity that in and of itself is funny. The way that you said it, 4 too many is actually a really funny way of saying that's too many. Yes. So that specificity is yet another really good example of a joke. So that's a double funny. Double joked funny, yeah. So the 4 is too many is actually a laugh line, and then the toe jam is the punchline. So that is very, very well done.
Oh my gosh, how do you feel after all of that?
Oh, I feel happy, I would say. Yeah. It's a good feeling.
Nice, yeah. This exercise gives us a safe way to express our endless internal conflicts, as we've been experiencing. Our lives are filled with ambivalences, and if we can write them down and laugh with them playfully, that can help us accept them. Acceptance can stop the internal conflict and bring forward peace and contentment, that we recognize that our multiple selves are accepted.
Yes.
Well, that's true, because we're not necessarily wanting to be rid of our critical self. It's not about that. It's about acceptance and making them all part of the team in a sense. And yeah, thanks. Yeah, good.
Yes, weaving them together. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So when we write down our thoughts and feelings, we understand them more clearly, the role that they play. So if we are struggling with stress, depression, anxiety, of course, creating a journal of these narratives and then wrapping them in humor, it can allow us that benefit of acceptance with a little bit of joy and help us gain control of those feelings, to help us feel like we understand our mental health. So I say, let's get writing.
Absolutely. And I imagine, so Stan, you sort of mentioned this just a moment ago, you started along this path, and I'm wondering if you have more to add. Would love to hear more. So I imagine you hear about internal conflicts a lot in the field of compassion. So how does this exercise sort of fit in with your work?
Yeah, I mean, that is sort of the nub of the issue, isn't it? Is these internal conflicts, these sort of paradoxes, ambivalences. I mean, the other area of great interest for me, of course, is motivational interviewing, which is something that I share with Mallory. And actually, it's interesting because one of my little things is where motivational interviewing and compassion-focused therapy kind of meet and become this sort of wonderful kind of thing for me, my two professional loves coming together. And actually, maybe my third professional love is now going to be therapeutic humor, because there's the sweet spot, you know, kind of CFT, working with parts, multiple selves, critical self, maybe the shamed self, but certainly anxious, angry, sad selves, you know, these different parts, bringing in the compassionate self, perhaps with some of the warm and friendly punchlines. Am I coming into the process, looking at dilemmas, looking at ambivalences, and perhaps even kind of the therapeutic humor, making all of that sort of, well, kind of feel happy, you know, like, and if people feel calm and safe and happy, then, you know, all sorts of wonderful things can flow from that for them.
Thank you for sharing that. I would do a simpler, complex reflection, but all I'm really going to say is Therapeutic Humor would love to have you, Stan.
Right. There you go.
I agree. I agree. And as you know, I think that there's a lot of crosswalks there that we can all really find a beautiful blend together. So
I won't say menage a trois, but, you know, kind of it's a lovely threesome. Why did I say that, or did I just think it?
I think that was out loud, but what I think you're saying is a beautiful braid of the concepts together to create. That's
what I'm trying to say.
Rope that will help keep us feeling secure. I like it.
Great.
Reframe. Beautiful. We're all in this together now. Okay. Remember that later.
Anything for a laugh. Anything.
All right. So interestingly enough, I used humor to accept a paradox in my life, an internal conflict in my life. And I'd love to share it with you because it did require a great deal of inward thinking and reflection, and really that compassionate self, as well as that critical self. My example in my paradox is, ladies, do you relate to this one? I really want my partner to read my mind. And the opposite of that is the truth. That is, no one can read my mind. And so using therapeutic humor became a resource to me so that I can find some acceptance with this sort of irrational belief and expectation. So first I took my paradox and I added a non sequitur punchline. I want my partner to read my mind. No one can read my mind. I guess I won't get my deposit back. And I mean, see, it makes you laugh. And the process gave me some instant relief from the intensity of my contradicting feelings. And the truth is that many people will find that the therapeutic process ends right there. You know, you just have this paradox, you add a punchline, and that's fine. But another thing that you can do is you can take that paradox and turn it into a more traditional comedy performance, which is what I tried to do. So I took away the non sequitur punchline. Stan, I know you've seen me do a little bit of stand-up comedy, just a little bit. So I took away that non sequitur punchline. I expanded the narrative just a little bit, and then I added a more linear punchline using some more advanced writing techniques, thanks to a little bit of support from Lodge here. And I recorded the joke.
Ah.
And I have to tell you, it took me about 77 takes.
Okay.
I'm not even exaggerating. That might be the exact number. Holding my phone to my face. And the reason why I did that is I wanted to capture a version that really sparked that joy and laughter for me. And each time I practiced it, I got a little bit closer to acceptance. And so I know this sounds a little bit bizarre, but do you want to see it, Stan? It's 38 seconds.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When I'm in a relationship with someone, I want them to be able to read my mind, just know how I'm thinking and feeling without me having to say a thing. And by the way, they also must have the power of flight and teleportation. I mean, is that too much to ask? I know. I know. They will never be able to fly or teleport or even be able to read my mind, which is a good thing because I think of some weird. It's basically a circus of dancing bananas up there.
Okay.
Just dancing bananas up there, friends. I tell
Yeah.
you what. So be careful. Proceed with caution.
Totally.
But,
some of the things that go on in my mind, I would be very concerned if people could read it.
Yes.
That's the thing. So really, I feel really grateful that I was able to face this paradox, even though it was painful, because at the end of the day, I got to laugh about it. I got to have some joy, some laughter. And frankly, now I really understand that I can have these two contradictory, conflicting feelings that can exist at the same time. And I don't have the same internal conflict anymore. It's just sort of gone. I don't expect it anymore.
And you can see how sort of complex, so taking it from that non sequitur piece to the more traditional, it is a much heavier lift. So that's just something to consider. Though, as Mallory said, I think most people will stop with the sort of daily practice of the non sequiturs and finding that sort of more instant joy. Mallory is very interested in doing more comedy writing and work on that skill. So that's not a necessity for the therapeutic humor, but it's just a really good example of a more complex experience when it comes to sort of addressing this particular ambivalence, or really any ambivalence. So, Mallory, thank you for sharing that story. It is wonderful. It's amazing. Now, you may be asking yourself out there, so as we're closing out this podcast, I did it again. Now you may be asking yourself, can I get Mallory and Lodge to come work with me, my team, group, community, whatever? Yes, you can. If you're interested in that, you can visit MalloriDeSalle.com, and you can go and check out her work and contact her through her website, or you can go to LodgeMccammon.com and do the same. Send us a message. We'd love to work with you.
And we just really appreciate you, Stan, and for anyone who's listening so much. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. And thank you for being on Compassion in a T-shirt.